Welcome to RedBuilt's Video Guides to Revit. Let's start by creating a new project. We'll go to New, and we're going to be using the RedBuilt 2020 template for our project. After you've opened and saved this file, you'll notice we have preset working views, some notes, schedules, and sheets. First thing we want to do is go to our Manage tab and open up the project information and fill out all the information we have from the project. Now that we're done doing that, we'll say OK and go set up our deliveries. Here on the Manage tab, you'll go to Global Parameters and open that. You have delivery 1 through 10 set up, so you can start by editing and naming these to the deliveries you want. So this will be the iJoist roof. And I'll edit this to change it for my glue-lams. If you need to add more than 10, you can click on the New button, type in your new delivery, set the type of parameter to text, and then click OK. And the value, you want to change it to the delivery number that you're adding. So you can change the name of the parameter through the edit, and then change the value to which delivery you want it to be. Click OK when you're done. Next, we'll go and start setting up our plan view. I'll start by going to Level 1 floor plan. And in this floor plan, if you can get a file, particularly a Revit file, IOC file, or a CAD file, it would be great to use to outline your footprint. If you don't, and in this case, all we have are PDFs, so I'm going to load a PDF of the architectural plan so we can use that to sketch out our footprint and add our grid lines. To do that, we want to go to our Insert tab and select PDF. From here, we want to go to the location where I've saved my PDF. And this is a single file PDF I've extracted from construction documents. Now, after examining the PDF, I found this to be the correct size, 1:1. It's scaled correctly, and it's not a scan. It's a good PDF from a Revit file. It's best to determine that before you do this so you know what kind of resolution you can use. The higher resolution, the better snapping and finer quality you have. If it's a scan, a higher resolution would be nice. This will take longer at a higher DPI than one of the lower ones. So it depends on how good the PDF is. I'm going to use 600 so we can have the richest, cleanest look. Now the PDF is loaded and it wants us to place the image. What I do is center it in the middle of the crop box and just click to apply it. It'll finish loading up and then we'll have our PDF ready. Now the PDF image is placed on our plan, we can set up a couple pieces on the options for the PDF. So if we're here, we want to send it to back so it's back behind all the other objects. Selecting Enable Snaps so you can snap to lines that are within the PDF. And then the last option is the Manage Images. So when you go in here, this is a list of all the images in your project. And the top one It's the one we just entered. You can add, reload, place multiple instances of this PDF anywhere in your project. If you click to delete the object, you'll delete all instances of the image from the model. And so if you do that, you'll need to go back, reinsert it, and realign it to your sheets or your views that you had it placed in there. To be able to have the ability to turn the PDF on and off as we work, I select and go to Hide in View Elements. So we'll hide that specific PDF. So when we want to show it, we can simply turn it on and off through the Reveal Hidden Elements button here. So we'll turn it on, and the first thing I want to do is set my crop region to the visible area of the plan. And this will also help set up all your views and align everything. I'll rearrange some of my elevations, markers, to match up with what we have, and move them out of the way. So there, if I turn this off, then we have our view already set up. Next thing we want to do is start with our grid lines. I will start with my grid lines. So here off the structure, we'll use the grids and just arbitrarily place a grid line. Click into the text editor, change it to match your first grid, cancel out of that. We'll next want to align it to the grid on the PDF. Once that's aligned, we can do some small adjustments as we need. We want to stretch it out. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this horizontally. And in the options, make sure we have multiple copies selected so we can get them all. And so we'll just take and copy this. Start point, and using the temporary dimensions and or snapping to the existing grid lines, we'll place all the grids. And it doesn't have to be exact. We'll dimension these grids and correct anything once we're done. And this I'll cancel and do the horizontal. We want to start the process again. Start at grid 1. Draw our first grid. Change the text to 1. Cancel out and align. Cancel, then select, and we'll again start copying. There, now our grids are complete. Next, we'll hide this and go and add some dimensions. We'll do one each and then one overall. Start over if you miss. Do one overall. Now I'll go through here and adjust all my grid lines so they match the conducts. So what we're going to do is turn on the hidden elements, and in each area we can select our grids and use the temporary dimension to correct the location of them. And we'll go through and select each one. So we moved C, now we have to move D, and we'll go through this process to clean it up. Now that we're done adjusting all the grid lines to match the conducts, we're going to start with adding our exterior structural walls. Well, let's start sketching the structural walls. In the Structure tab, select the wall and pick the wall type that I want to use, in this case exterior 2x6 wall. It'll be depth, so it's going to go from level 1 down to level 0. Now, since we're on the lowest level, I'm going to change it to height and go up to level 2. Location line here is set to the core face exterior, and it'll be set as a chain so we can draw all of them in one command. So I'll start by zooming into a nice clean corner, and in here you can see all the different layers and the exterior sheathing. So I'm going to pick a point on the inside corner to start my wall. And as I drag it out, you can see it stretches along and aligns. Now we don't have to be perfect because this is just a sketch. And so I'll just be quickly selecting each corner of this wall and going all the way around building, not worrying about exactly where it needs to be, but placing or what type of wall it is. Coming through and sketching out the whole building. And we'll do this all the way around. Now I'm done sketching the outline of the building, and I'm going to want to turn off or hide this view so I can see all my walls and my grids. Now I'm going to go back through and make the small adjustments. As you can see, it's sketched out and it should align with the grid lines. So I'll go through and adjust all the walls and clean everything up. The quickest way through this is using the Align tool and aligning the grids in the main walls. And it's a process of just going around and adjusting everything, first to the grid lines and then adding dimensions to walls that do not align with the grid. Now I'm done making all my fine adjustments to the exterior wall and checking that the dimensions I've added match what the architectural plan shows. So now we can go and turn off our PDF, and we have the exterior. Lots of dimensions. These can be cleaned out as needed as you go. Right now we're just doing design work, so we can just leave those and clean it up at a later point. Next we'll add all the interior and structural walls according to the plans in the same manner as we did with the exterior walls. So turning on the PDF and coming in and starting to add all the structural walls and any partition walls that we'll need. Now to start interior bearing walls, we go back to structure and start our wall, save our project, and then pick the interior 2x6 bearing walls. And then come in, and again we're just going to be sketching as close as we can all the bearings. And first we gotta make sure we are selecting the correct one using the core face exterior. And then drawing our walls. And here you can see you can highlight and use tab select to highlight through until you find the edge you want. And with these, when doing your walls, if it starts on the opposite side, you can use the space bar to flip it and then continue on. In this case, I don't want to do a chain, so I'll come up here to my options and unchain it. Cancel once and the program will still be running. And I'll continue to go through my construction documents and adding all the interior bearing walls and any partition walls that I need to use. Now that I have my interior structural walls done, I want to add a few partitions. The simple way to do that is use the architectural wall command, and that will preset the type of structural wall. You do need to pick an interior 2x6 non-bearing, is what I'm going to use, and then double check in this structure that structural is turned off and it says non-bearing. And from there you can go through and keep on adding all your walls that you're going to have. So here's the final product of our footprint with our exterior walls and interior walls. Cleaned up the dimensions that I'd like to use. Now we're going to look at the 3D view to see how well we did. So here I have the scope box turned on and the crop regions visible. Now from the first looks of it, I see some of the walls did not come in at the correct level. So to fix this, we're going to select one of those walls and select every instance in this view. And moving around, we see it's all these structural walls, interior bearing walls. We did not change. So in here, we can look at the base constraints, level 1. The offset here is -5 feet, and the top should be level 2. So we'll change it to level 2, zero out our base offset, and that'll move all the walls up where they should be. Now at this time that we have a 3D view, I always like to split my views by typing WT. And so you can see the 3D view as you're working with your plan. Next, what we're going to be doing is setting up our levels. Now I have a PDF with all my levels from the architectural plans, and we'll be going to one of the elevation views to set those up. So here we're in the south elevation, and we have our default levels that came with it in the template, and we're going to be renaming these and adjusting them according to, and adding new ones according to our PDF. So looking at our PDF and the architectural elevations, the best one I found to start with was this view. And in this particular job, it just has top of parapet. Sometimes it will have top of plate, which we do have that, but looking at section cuts, top of plate does not align with the top or bottom of any of the joists. So in this case, I went through and took measurements from one level, this top of plate, to approximately the top of a lot of the joists. So I can come in and add additional levels for the top of joist because we want to do our plan and draw all of our joists on a particular level and or working plane, which we're going to be creating multiple working planes for the slope, different slopes of the roof. Now to start, according to our PDF, level 1 is top of slab, and that's 0. Where we have the top of wall, we'll make that top of plate. So level 2, where the walls go to, I'm going to rename that to top of plate. And then it'll ask you if you'd like to rename, and yes, I do want to rename that. Next, we'll change the height. The height is 12 feet. Level 3, I'm going to set that as the highest parapet. I have many parapets in this project. So top of, I'll call this high parapet because I'll be adding a lot more. Now level 5, level 0 we don't have, so we can go ahead and delete that level. It'll ask you if you want to delete the views and elements on them, and go ahead and click OK. Now that we've renamed our default levels, we're going to add 2 additional levels. So from the Structure tab, we'll go to and select the level command. There's 2 ways you can add commands, just by drawing a simple line and checking our options. This will make a plan with a 0 offset. In this case, we're just going to create a reference level and not make a plan. So I'll deselect make a plan. And then anywhere close to where it's going to be, go ahead and click your first point and your end point. Here you can hit escape twice, and we'll rename this top of low parapet. The elevation of this will be 16 feet. Next way to do it is do an offset from an existing. So we'll go back to Structure and select Level, save your project. Up here in the options, we want to pick Line. And again, we don't want to make a plan view. This is a reference. The next one is going to be 2 feet below the high parapet. So in the offset, we'll make that 2 feet. In the view, just hover over the existing level, and you'll see the dashed line where the level will be placed, and click to place it. Once you're done with that, we can rename the level. And we'll reset that. Now these 2 levels that I added, I did not make a plan view because I'm going to use them for a reference to lock the top of the parapet walls I will be adding later. So next, real quick, we're going to do some visibility change here, and I'm going to select consistent colors. So now it will be a lot easier to see all our walls and our elevation in this view. I will reset that for each view as I create them. Next, I want to add 2 more levels that I will have a plan for, and these will be based off of construction documents. And looking in there, I found 2 overall high points that I can use as a basis. The first one is here at the far end at 2'9", and then I have a higher bay of joists that'll be a little over 7 feet. So those are the 2 I'm going to add, because when making a view, I want to cut at the highest location above the joists that I want in my plane. So those 2 will be used. Now back in Revit, we go back to the Structure tab and select Level again. This time I'm going to use the pick line. I'm going to have Make View selected. The offset is going to be from my construction documents 2'9". And that was from the top plate. So I'm going to get the dash line above and select that and call this top of joist. I'm going to make this -1 because I'll have 2 of these. We can rename these later on to match our plans if we'd like. The next one is 7 feet. So again, I'll have the pick line, make a plan, and change this to 7 feet. And this was also above the top plate. So I'll hover over that and select that. This one automatically renamed it to the next to Joist-2 and set it at our 19 feet. Now we have all our major levels that we want to use, 2 of them with our newly created plan views and the others for reference. Next we'll be adding working planes for the sloped bays in our joist. Before we start making our working planes, let's go through our elevations and do a little cleanup. Sometimes items will not be in view, so it's always a good idea to adjust our extents of our crop region. So in here you can pretty much see everything and it looks good. We'll go to our west elevation and we can see not all the levels are showing. Quickest way is take the region and stretch it out until you can see all of them. Now this also, we don't have all the grid lines, so we'll stretch this to the left until we have the whole building in view. And for visibility, we'll go in and change to consistent colors so we can see our walls, and we'll be able to see our joists as we add them. So in the north, again, this slight adjustments to the view. Verify the whole building is in view, and we'll set the color. And last, the east. Set a color and make sure our view is in range. There. Next, we'll go back to the plan and create some section cuts. We're back to our working view. We're going to add section cuts to help guide us in creating our slope working planes. So I'm going to go to our view, select section cut, just kind of arbitrarily place some sections. And we'll do another one that will be shown vertically. We'll flip in that direction. There. Now we'll jump over to our section views. Kind of clean up our view so it looks good. From here, we'll start on the left side. Now looking at our construction plans, let's see here in the structurals that the A1 joist will slope to the east, and then some are sloping in opposite directions or slopendicular, so that we will be adding many of these sloped working planes. From the view over here, this is the plane that we're going to be creating, and the only way I was able to determine was scaling the drawing. So I have 2'9" from our top plate that we found before. And then with that and a 1/4 inch slope, we'll be able to create our work plane. Now we'll zoom into this same area. And to start, go to our Structure tab, and then select the working reference plane. To start, we go with the high point of our slope, which determined is this intersection from the low roof level and grid B. So we'll start from there. Our next point, at a 1/4 inch to a foot, the angle needs to be 1.19. So we'll get close to it. And then once we've done the second, we can change the angle to exactly what we need. And at the same time, while we're here, we want to click to name, and I'm going to name it the same name as the joist. So that'll help me go through, because we'll have many of these. So I need to know which joists this slope plane will be referenced to. And that's it. Now we have a sloped working plane for A1 joists. Now another example on the far side of the building, we don't have actual intersection points, so we're going to have to draw some detailed lines to create that intersection from the top of plate that the architectural drawings have. The next step is to start adding ledger to our project. I've set up my views that I'm going to be working in, and to help me align the ledgers. From the construction documents, we found that the ledgers are at different elevations, and I've added dimensions from top of plate to the top of the joist and or ledger. So now we have a base point to start from, top of plate, and then the dimensions to set the elevation of the ledgers once we've added them. Back in Revit, we'll start with the Structure tab and run the beam command. Load the families if they have not been loaded previously. From the type selector, select the ones you want to start with. And in the plan, we'll make sure that the placement plane is set to top of plate. And I'll set the structural usage to girder since it's going to be a bearing material. In our plan, we can just start by adding our ledger to the center of the wall and a smaller one on this side. We hit escape a couple times. Now we play, you can see that it's been placed. The top of the ledger is at the top of plate. Look at our construction documents. We need 2'9" and 2'5" for these two ledgers. going to select the first ledger, and in the Z offset value, I'm going to put in the 2'9". For the smaller, I'm going to go to the same place, the Z offset value, and change that to 2'5". And you see they're now pretty close to the elevation of where our joist plane is. Next, we're going to zoom in closer and align our ledger to the inside face of our wall, and we'll lock it. So to the modify and align, select inside face of wall and the outside face of the ledger, and then select the lock to lock it in. We do this for the reason if the bearing wall moves at all, the ledger will follow this wall, as shown here. Also, when we add joists to the ledgers, they will all be connected. So as if we move the bearing walls, the ledger and the joists will move and stretch accordingly. Next, we'll align our second ledger. Now, sometimes you have this, can't keep elements joined. It was joined to this exterior wall. That's not important, so we can unjoin it and then we can lock it to the wall. Now looking at our section cut, we see that our ledgers are at the right elevation and are flush to the inside face of the wall. The only other thing you need to do is come in and make a few adjustments to your ledger. And you're finished. The last thing is to select our ledger and add our properties. So we'll add our delivery, and in this case I'll type it out for my ledger, and no other options are necessary. Next, I'm going to add some rim board to this wall. This is going to be a bottom bearing wall. To that, I'm using the same material, so I can select an existing piece and create similar. It will keep the same properties for delivery and type and other settings. This area, we have a condition where the joists are slopendicular to the roof slope. So we're going to have a ledger that's going to be raked along this wall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy a similar one, create similar, and then we're going to use the working plane, the placement plane here, and we're going to pick the one that relates to the joist there, which is the A2. From here, we can simply just start anywhere along this wall and draw our ledger. Once we've placed it, we want to come in and align this to the wall. And we'll cancel it. And if we look at our section cut, you can see that it has run along the slope. So now it'll have the correct alignment, and slope correction will happen in the final cut length for it. Now I want to add some rim joist to a bottom bearing condition at this wall. And the rim I need is the same material as the ledger. So in this case, I'm just going to select a piece of ledger, right click and click, create similar. By doing this, you copy over some of the same properties as the ledger. So the type of family you're adding, the Z offset value that we changed for 2'5", structural usage, and then the delivery parameters. The only thing here is RB type. I'm going to change this to be rim for scheduling purposes. Next, we'll check that our placement plan is still top of plate, our base point, which it is. And now we can zoom in and start adding it. Again, I'll just add it to the center of the wall and adjust it after I've added this. Now to see this better in a section, we're going to move our section view out over where the rim is, and we can see it's just a little off from our joist working plane and the outside face of this wall. So we'll use the align tool and align our rim to the wall, and I'm going to lock it so it stays with this wall. Next is adjustment of the elevation. So it's not very far. You certainly can use the measure tool to measure the distance you need, which is 95 and 256. So we can certainly, but that's a little too much. So we'll try 2.4. It's a little less, too much. We'll change this to half an inch. And it's close, so I think we'll land on 5/8. And there, that looks good. Also, sometimes if your wall is not set to be flush, you can easily use the align tool and align the wall to here. You can lock it so if you change the depth of your rim, the wall will change with it. In this case, we will not bother with that. Finally, I'll come in and make my small adjustments for in length, clean up the model a little bit. There we have our bay ready for joists. Next, we're going to go through the steps of adding our I-joist framing to our roof. And before doing this, I set up my views, my plan view, a 3D view, and a section view. For the 3D view, I want to change the contrast because the walls and ledgers in our product are going to be the same color. So by doing this, we'll go to the Visual Graphics override, find the wall category, and change the pattern to a solid fill and any kind of color you want. I'm going to go with light gray, and that'll essentially paint the walls gray. Also want to be able to see through these walls, so I'm going to add a transparency. Once that's done, it makes it much easier to be able to see through the walls and see all our product and any unessential product or elements are in the background. Also want to make my view a little bit smaller so I can just focus in on the area I'm working in. To do this, we go to our properties and turn on the section box. And by selecting a section box, you can take the shape handles and slice through your building just to show the area that you want to work in. By doing this, when you zoom, it zooms just this area. To start adding our joist to our framing plan, first we need to set the working plane. Now we have a sloped reference plane that we set up to use for our A1 joist that we're adding. So in our plan, we'll go to the Structure tab and set the work plane and set it to our reference plane, A1. Next, from the Structure tab, we'll start the beam command and select Load Family to load all the I-joist types that we need. Once there in our options, we can check to make sure we're on the A1. Our structural usage can be set to a joist, and 3D snapping is turned off when working in our plan. Now you see Revit has already pre-selected the last element that we've added, which was rim board. And it also has brought over some of the same dimensional information and ordering information that we have. So we're going to need to clean this up for our joists because, for example, the offset value will set the joist almost 2.5 feet higher than our working plane. So we'll go through and clear out these options. For our delivery, we're still going to be using 2, so that's fine to keep. And our RB type will change to the joist type. Now we can go and select the I-joist that we want to use. After selecting this, we have more options for our ordering. We have our slope that we can input, 1/4 inch per foot. Next, from the calculations, we need the loose web stiffeners on both ends. So at the start end, which is the left, we'll select loose and beveled. And then on the right end, we'll select the same, loose and beveled. Now we're ready to be placing our joist. We'll zoom into the plan, and we're going to start down here close to the end of the wall and find the center of this bearing wall and click to place it and escape a couple times. Now selecting it, we can see that the joist is sloped and is aligned with our sloped working plane. Next, what we need to do is set it the distance from our start point. In this case, our start point is going to be the inside face of the wall. Now, typically there'll be some temporary dimensions from the center of your beam to a certain location. It could be a grid line, a wall, another joist. If you do not see those, you can come up to the options bar and activate your dimension. And then you'll get a temporary dimension to show. As you see, it's grabbed on to this far wall. So I'm going to take this grip and drag it down and put it to the inside face of my wall. And now I can change the location and make it exact to 2 feet. Now my first joist is set. Next, I'm going to use the section view to do a little editing on my joist. As you can see, it goes all the way through the ledger, and I like to make this flush to my ledger, or close to. So that's pretty close, and I'll do the same at the other end. There. Now we can array our joist throughout the bay. In this situation, I have 2 bearing details. One is a ledger on this end, and up here is a bottom bearing condition. So I'm going to array my joists just to the first one here, and then edit that joist before arraying it again. I'll first select my joist, and then go to the Modify and use the Array tool. In my properties here, make sure Group and Associate is unchecked. The number of joists I want to end up with, including the one that's selected. And then I make sure Move to Second is selected because I want to give the distance from the first to the second joist. So in my plan, I can click in anywhere and start stretching it out to 2 feet, or I can simply type in the distance manually. And it has arrayed all the joists 2 feet on center. I had one extra joist here at the bottom bearing, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to edit this joist and get it cleaned up on one side, and then once I've done that, array the rest of the way. So I'm going to take my section that I have here and align it up there. And looking at here, I have a bit of a gap in which I can take this joist in here, and at the end off extension, I can add a couple inches to it. This will reset the joist and put the join node to the center of the wall. After I've done this, I can come back and I now have the option of using the end join cut back. This end join cut back will be the distance from the width of the wall to the rim. And in this case, I'll use 3 3/4 inches. And now it's flush to my rim. The left I don't need to do anything because it is the same as the previous joists. Now I'll go back and array this to the glue lamp. Now our joist bay is done. One thing that needs to be changed here at the bottom bearing is that these joists need to be, the web stiffener needs to be changed to a wide web stiffener. So I'll select those and go down in the options and switch that to a wide web stiffener. And if we see in the 3D view, we notice that the web stiffeners have changed to wide. The next area I'm going to frame in is this here stepped area in here. Looking at the construction documents, we're going to have 3 different joist types. We're going to have I-65 18-inch, 14-inch, and the 11/7/8 I-45s. To start, I'm going to find a common bearing for all the joists, which will be this ridge wall. And I'm going to start from the left edge of the building. So we're going to go to our beam command. In our placement plan, we have created a sloped reference plane to use for all these joists. So we're going to set that to the A7, E2, E4. Next, we'll make sure we're going to be starting with our I-45 11/65 and make sure all our options are set. These came in from the last joist that we had added. And to start in the plan, I'll just hover over the center of the wall to place it. Escape a couple times. Select that joist. Then to move it, we go back to activate our dimensions. So we get a temporary dimension and then set this the proper distance from the wall. Once that's done, I can come in and do some slight editing at each end. Make sure it's good before I array. Now we can select the joist and start the array command. And make sure group associates unchecked. Type in the total joists we're going to have. And in the plan, start the array and stretch out to the distance you need. Now that we have all our joists arrayed, we need to go back and change the lengths and the joist series. Now the quickest way to do this is find the first selection and cross-select them. And by using the filter, we can filter out these other items that were selected. So we only want to select our joist framing. Once we've done that, we can go to the type selector and select the appropriate joist. And down in the properties, we're going to want to change the name of our joist. And then any settings that need to be changed from the older one. So we have our slope is set. Web stiffeners, we need loose web stiffeners that are beveled on both ends. And then that's it. Next, we'll select the third group. Use filter to filter out our joist. Using the type selector, picking the next series. And in the properties, changing the name and setting web stiffeners. Next is to extend these joists to the ledgers that they're going to bear on. Doing this, we go to the Modify tab and select the Trim Extend Multiple Elements command. And we zoom in here and highlight the edge that we want to extend to, and then carefully select each joist to extend out. Once we've done that, we can go and select the next edge of our ledger and then select the joist to extend. And that completes our next bay of joists. I finished the remainder of the joist bays and added bay tags to each area for reference. Next, I'm going to do the high roof joists, which are slopendicular to the slope of the roof. So we'll switch to our high joist roof plan. In the section views, I have the plane we're going to be working on highlighted, and I have a bearing section. So from the Structure tab, start the beam, set our reference plane to A2. Make sure we're using the correct joist. And then click and add. As you can see, the joists have automatically rotated to match the slope. And this will be true as we array the joist. Now we need to set our first joist to 2 feet off the inside face of the wall. When a joist is slopendicular to the roof, you don't get the option of activating dimensions and using temporary dimensions to move it off. In this case, the best place to do this move is in a section view. So we'll go into section view and zoom in, and we want to move this joist from the midpoint to the intersection of the inside face of the wall. From there, we can go back, move it again, and move it the 2 feet it's required. So now our joist is 2 feet from the inside face, or approximate in a plan view. And there, we finish our array. Delete any extras. Looking at our section cut, we can confirm that our joists are rotated to the slope and lay out correctly and are aligned with the ledger. Next, we're going to do an area that is flat. And in this area, the last area we need to frame in is this mechanical well area. And the construction drawings, they're shown flat with no slope. So in doing this, I've already added the two ledgers for the bearing, you can see in this drawing, and they're at the top plate level. Now from the construction drawings, I've measured out that the top of these joists will be 1.5 feet above the top plate level. So in our section, we're going to add another level for these joists. So we'll add pick line. In this case, we're only using it for reference and we do not need a plan. So I'll deselect that and set the offset. And come over to the top plate, select, and we'll rename this top of our joist, E5. Now that we have that set, we can correct our ledgers by selecting them and then editing the work plane. Go to the name and find the top of E5 joist. Now they're set. Now we can add joist to this bay. We'll be using the 16-inch I-65s. And make sure our reference plane is set to the level that we added. And we're just going to place it right there. Now selecting, we can take the temporary dimension and put it to the inside face. Change the location of the first joist. Come in and add our properties. Not beveled, loose. And start the array command. Delete any extras that we have. Now I'm just going to copy this tag over and edit the type. And then I can align it. And we're finished. In this joist bay, I'm going to be adding some I-joist blocking perpendicular to the joists along here. To start that, from the Structure tab, we're going to add structural component. Click on Load Family to load the blocking families that you need, and from the Type selector, select the one we're going to be using. For schedule level, you could set to the view that you're using, and then when setting these, it will align with the joist. So if the joist is sloped, the blocking panel will slope along the same plane as the joist. So we'll zoom in here and hover until we find the edge of the face and click to place it. And then cancel. By selecting it, we can use the shape handles to stretch it out to the adjacent joist. As you can see in the section, the blocking panel has aligned to the slope of the joist. So in the same manner, we're going to need to move this by moving it in the section. So we pick the end and then the intersection, move again, and move it the distance we need to start it at. Now here it's off from the joist now because it was a horizontal movement that I made. So while it's still selected in the properties, you can go to the offset from host, and this should be zeroed out to match the top of the joist. And now it's reset. Now I'll copy this to the other side of joist, ignoring the instance warning. And again, by selecting both these joists, we can start the array command, the amount we want, and the distance in this case is 4 feet. Need a couple more, so we'll just copy this. And then we're done. Now again, because these are not aligned to the sloped reference plane that we have, we need to select all these and again zero out the offset from host to correct the elevation. And now we can see all the joists align. We missed one. From what we can see, this was that single one we copied. Even though offset from host is 0 and the work plane is not associated, we need to manually align this to the top of the joist. So we'll use the align tool, select the top of the joist and the blocking, and then we're going to have to do the same with the one on the other side, and we can do that from this view using the bottom flange. Escaping to finish. Now all our blocking is aligned to the joist they're attached to, and the 3D view looks correct. Next, we're going to be adding hangers to our I-joist. To start this, we'll go to our Structure tab and select Component. Now this is a face-based component, so you need to select a face either in the plan, or in this case a 3D view, or a section view. First, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our type selector and find the hanger we need, which is a face mount hanger. Our schedule level we can set to our overall main level that we use, the low joist roof. The hanger widths and flange width and seat slopes are all different options that you can add, but first we're just going to add it to our joists. The first option is in the plan, so we'll zoom in here close. Now when placing this, you'll want to use the spacebar to rotate it to align with the joist, and then you'll want to make sure that you're highlighting the center of the joist. If you highlight the ledger, it'll attach itself to the ledger, and we want to attach it to the joist. So we can just eyeball a nice location here, the center of the joist, and click to place it. Another way of doing this is in a 3D view. We come and select in here. You can see it'll attach to any face in a 3D view. Just like the plan view, we want to select the top face of the joist. Use the space bar to rotate the item, And in this case, we can get real close and select the joist and the ledger and click to place it. Skip a few times to finish. Now in the plan, we can see that the joist is not fitting the hanger just right. On the hanger shape handles, we can take these and pull them in or out to be flush with the joist. We can also use the cursor arrows to better align our hanger to our structure. Now these options, you can also come in and change the width, the hanger height. It's already set 11/7/8, which that's what our joists are. And if you need more detail, the seat bearing flange, slope if it's required. Next, we'll come down and fill out all the delivery information that we need for this hanger. Now that all our properties have been filled out, we're ready to array these hangers along the joist bay. From the modify, we select array, make sure it's ungrouped, put in the total amount of hangers you need, and then come back into the plan and start the array. Now sometimes you'll get this warning that states the instance will lose association to the host. And that's okay because we don't necessarily need the hangers to be attached to every single joist. And this is just a soft warning. So you can say okay, and then it finishes the command. Next, I'm going to copy this hanger and put a couple on the right end. So what I'm going to do is select my hanger, right click and check create similar. And this way I can have the same hanger with the same information already preset. Going over to the right side, since it's a face based, we'll use the spacebar to rotate it around and select to place it. And I can just go through here real quick and place it on each joist. Now here I have a situation where it lands on both, and I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out. So I'm just going to add one additional hanger and deal with this later. Now that we have all our hangers done, we can go and start adding a few annotations to this. Another example of adding hangers to joists that are perpendicular to the roof slope, shown in the section here, is the same as adding in any other situation in the plan. So we'll go with the structural component. In the type selector, we want face mount, so we'll search for a face mount hanger. And zooming in to the first, using the spacebar to rotate, we find the same middle of the joist. Finish and do a slight adjustment. As you can see, the hanger matches the slope of the joists. Here in this section, we can go ahead and adjust the hanger width. And arraying is the same process. When arraying hangers on a Slopendicular joist bay, there's a couple extra steps we have to take to make sure our hangers are aligning in the 3D model. To show you, we'll start the array command, and we'll just array like usual. Now this is the warning that always comes up, that you'll lose the association to the host. That means the hangers will not align with the top of the joists. They will array horizontally in a straight line. So these hangers will be a little bit higher every instance. as you can see in the section view. Now to correct this, in our plan, we come in and highlight all our hangers. And if we look in the options, we see that offset from host, there are multiple. If I selected one hanger, you see it's 5 and almost 6 inches above. So by selecting all, you see it's blank. If we click in there, we could type in 0 offset, and we come back into the plan. From our section view, you can see all the hangers are now aligned to the top of the joists in our model. And we'll do this to the right side also. Now that I've laid out all the framing in this job, I'm going to use the 3D view to look for any inconsistencies and make sure all the elevations and slopes and accessories are attached correctly. So I have my 3D view, a plan view, and the 2 working section views that I created to make any adjustments needed. So in the 3D view, I first could tell that there's some ledger that is not at the right elevation. In our plan, we'll move our section cut to cut through that area and then zoom in to our section. So by highlighting, we can see what's going on with this. And in the options coming through, I see it's to the top plate, which that would be correct, but the offset value matches another ledger that was set there. So this was not zeroed out, so we'll zero that out to lower it. Now to bring it up, we'll simply just measure to the sloped reference plane, and it's a little over 9 inches. So we'll set that Z offset the same distance. There, now it's close. Now this wall has a bit of a parapet, and we can simply take this and stretch it up, kind of clean up the view. Now next we can pull down and look at the other wall, and we have a similar condition with this exterior wall, and we'll drag this up to the low parapet. And I'll go through this process of zooming in, rotating, selecting an object in a 3D model. We'll make it so you can rotate around that object. If you don't have it selected, it uses the whole model. So coming through here, and I see there's a bunch of hangers that are the wrong depth. And it looks like it was copied from these 11/7/8 to the 18-inch deep. So in my plan, I can see where the highlighted hanger is. Come in and select all these hangers. Now that I have selected, I can make some adjustments. Now the offset from host is off a little, so we'll zero that out. Go to the hanger height and match that to the joist. Verify the rest of the parameters are correct. Take a look at the 3D view. It looks like that's corrected. I'll continue panning around and finding any other items that need to be adjusting. And here we find some more hangers. I select one, I can look in the plan and find the one that needs adjusting, and examine that. And it looks like these E4s. So I can go to the plan, select all those hangers, and then make these 18-inch for the joist. And also, again, offset from host. They will tend to migrate depending on what items you have, and if you've copied them and trimmed the joist, this information may change. So we'll zero that also. Here we have an additional, same process. Zero that out, change the depth, and it's set. It looks like we have a few extra for the 14-inch. It's this last one, so I selected those. Zero that out and change the depth. Looking through and selecting items to spin around in. And now for the rest of it, it looks like we have a clean 3D model. Now that I've completed my review of the 3D model, I'm ready to set up my views for my sheets. We want to do this prior to adding any kind of annotation, symbols or dimensions or text, because if the view will not fit on the sheet, then I'll have to change the scale of my views. And if there's any annotation or tags, they'll need to be readjusted after changing scale. So it's best to set up your views on your sheets prior to annotating. So once you do your annotating, there's a lot less manipulation of things and less errors. We'll start by going over to our roof placement plan sheet with our title block that is pre-filled out. And to start, we'll just take our working view and drag it onto the sheet and place it. Now, at first glance, the whole building fits at an 1/8 inch to a foot scale, and that works great. There is a lot of white space in between the building and the sheet, so I think it would be nice to scale this up and split up the views, maybe add a couple more sheets if I can't get both sides onto one sheet. So to do this, we can first test it out and double click into the viewport. Once you've done that, it unlocks the scale and your detail views and colors. So we'll change the scale to a 1/4 inch, so doubling the size, and see how much space it takes up. We double click back out of the view. We can adjust this view to fit on our sheet a little bit better and use the cursor keys to slightly nudge it and make any corrections. I could double click into the viewport again and select one of the grid lines and drag them all in a little bit more. And then double clicking back out, I can nudge my view over. Now that I know that I can fit it with a 1/4 inch per foot scale, you can notice that part of the building is way off the sheet. So we're going to duplicate these views and put this on a second page. Going back to our low joist roof, I'm going to make some dependents to this main one. We want to keep this main overall view. So in the project browser here, I'm going to right click and select duplicate view and duplicate as a dependent. By doing that, anything that's done in the overall plan with tagging and abbreviations and dimensions will transfer over. Now this will be the first one. I'll rename this. This will be our west side of the building. I'm going to right click on the main view and duplicate as a dependent again. I'm going to rename this as east. And go back to the west view. I can make adjustments to my crop region. And if crop view is selected and then annotation crop is selected, you will not see the east view. Now these section views symbols that we have, as long as they're not put on a sheet and they're blank, they will not print. So we can leave them and it's okay to show them way out in space. Now our east plan will do the same crop region adjustments so we can focus on just the area where you want to work in. And also the crop view and annotation crop are turned off. Now that we have those, we can put these two views onto our sheet. And this is the main view that we first did, so we can select this viewport and delete it and redrag in our west. That's preset. And then do some fine adjustments to get it to fit on the sheet. And our title block for this can be moved over and adjusted. And we have our first sheet. Next, I'll add an additional sheet for the east side. Coming down and selecting our D size. And then finding where it comes out in the browser, we'll need to rename, and we'll rename this R131. And then payment plan east. Then I'll rename the original plan and I'll put in west. Going back to the east plan, we'll find our east view and drag that onto the plan. And slide it over. Now this viewport is going to stretch out to show the section cut symbol that we have. But since it's not on another sheet, this will not print out. So it's okay to have that hanging out. Take the title and drag it over and make the adjustment. Now we have the east side on here. Now I have some extra room and I can use for the high roof area. And we can simply pull that onto our sheet. And it has the whole building and it's at 1/8 of an inch. So we can double click into the viewport. We'll adjust the scale. And in here, I'm going to turn on the crop region visibility and then make some adjustments to just show the high roof framing area. So we'll stretch this in. And now we have the high roof. Then double click back into the sheet and we can drag this over, grab the title, and adjust the title so it fits nicely. Then we have two views of two different areas on to one sheet. So it'll save us a little room. Now in my west building view, I want to add match lines and the reference sheet. We do that by coming to our View tab and selecting the Match Line command. And this invokes a sketch. And if you already have lines drawn, you can use the pick line, or you can draw a line from scratch. So I'm going to just pick a spot here and place it. And then click the green check to finish. Now that we've finished this, we need to add our reference. So zoom in here, and right next to the match line is the view reference to add annotation. So we check that, and in the properties, we want to select the matching view that we're going to reference. This would be the east. So here you can see that since the east view has been put onto a sheet, it is calling out the sheet number, and we can simply just place it. And we can place it on either end of our match line and escape to finish. Now we can take these and use the rotate command and rotate these around. We'll move it over here. Try to rotate it. There we go. Then we can drag and move to the proper location. And then the same thing over here. I'll move it there, rotate it. There. Now we'll go to the east and do the same process. So match line. Now I'm just quickly placing these. Pick a reference view. Sit on the top and bottom. Escape a couple times. And then we can again rotate and align our text. Now, going back to check on our views, looks correct, and it shows up on our sheets. Now that we have our two sheets set up and our views fit, we're ready to do some annotating and tagging. Now in the beginning, when we added our walls to our top of slab, we added dimensions in this view. I'd like to reuse these dimensions and place them onto my low joist roof instead of coming back here and running dimensions across all my grids and then any walls from grids. So this little trick, we're going to set our scale to match and then simply selecting a dimension, right-clicking and selecting all invisible view, you can see they're all selected. And it's a simple process of using the Control-C copy and then going to our low joist roof, and then from the Modify tab, we want to select the little arrow under the paste. And here we can say Align to Same Place. Now they're all placed and aligned to all the walls, just like the slab view. Now there is some adjusting to be done, but we can go through and adjust all our dimensions to match and clean it up. Now I finished adding the existing dimensions I had and adjusting them to fit and look nice. I want to make some adjustments to my grid lines. You see they're still going clear across the building. Some here, like grid 2, is not necessary on the west side, but is used on the east side of the building. And some of it goes right through our plans, and we'd like to clean them up. The way to fix this is select one of the grids and come over to the Edit Type button in the Properties. Under here you have the center segment, which from different options, continuous, none, or custom, you can set the center segment and break it without losing any kind of association to the grids. So from here, we'll change it from continuous to none. There's other settings here that you can use to turn items on and off, but we can also do it from the view. So we'll click on OK here. Now what that does is in the middle of this grid, and you have to zoom in and scroll across it, you'll find two small dots. And you can select and grab one of these dots and drag it out. And we'll drag it out all the way past the wall a little bit, put a little gap. Now it still looks like it's attached, and it is when you hover over it. But once you deselect these, and we can pull this out to here. Now once I deselect it, it shows that it's shortened at grid 4. Now if I don't want to have the grid 4 here because it doesn't align anything on the west side, it does on the east side though, I can select it again, and with this check mark I can turn off the head on this east side and come over on the west side. On the east side I can turn it on and show it on this side. And then it's a process of going through and adjusting each one of these as you need. Now you can take and select those really small and drag this out to the wall here. And by doing that, you essentially get rid of the grid on the one side. Now you can always reselect it and find that grip if you do want to show the line, center line. That. So I'll go back through and make those adjustments. Now the grid lines are cleaned up. There's a little bit of housework to do with dimension strings that were attached to those. Good way of doing it is simply coming and finding the grip for the dimension and dragging out the string line. It takes a couple. And once you find it, you can stretch that back out. A couple other spots here in dimensions, they're covering up the grid line type. We can take this end and stretch it back. So then we can see the grid lines. So a little bit of quick cleanup on these, and then we can see the grid lines a little bit better. There's one more. Pull that in. A few dimensions over here that need slight adjustments. We have that finished. Next is going to throw in some leader text, tags, and detail bubbles. With the general joist framing plan laid out, next I'm going to be adding some mechanical units and openings. To do this, we're going to go ahead and load up the mechanical PDF that I've created. Set our resolution to the highest resolution. Click OK, and once it's loaded up, we'll place it and load another. Now that my mechanical roof PDF is loaded, I can start placing the mechanical unit family that I'll be using. This is going to be a structural component family. The type selector, we'll select that and search for a mechanical unit. In the options in the ribbon, you have a choice of placing it on the face of an object in your model or placing it on the work plane of the model. We're going to use place on work plane and place it here on the same plane as our joist, the E5s. So that's set. We'll zoom in here and just generally locate the placement of one of the units. Next, we're going to take this unit and size the openings to match the openings we have in the mechanical duct plan. So next I'm going to load up the duct PDF. With my ductwork plan loaded, now I can make the adjustments to my mechanical unit for the openings. First thing we need to do is determine the size. Here we have it typed out as 18 by 12, so we can use that. If you don't know the size, you can use the measure tool to measure the openings and then set those changes. So in the properties, we have the supply and return duct widths located here. So we already have the 12 inches. We'll put in 18 inches for the other two for the lengths. Now if we zoom in, we can use shape handles here to locate the opening a little bit better. With the supply line, we'll take the grips for the return and align that with the return duct until it's kind of roughed in. With the text, we can fill out the load in the properties panel. You only need to put the number in. The pound sign automatically will show. Then with the shape handles, we can align our text to place it in a pretty good location. Once we're done with that, I can go back through and copy this unit to all the other locations. Now one trick with PDFs is you can select these PDFs and cycle them back and forth between each other so you can see the roof plan. You can do this by selecting a PDF and determine the MEP one here is the ductwork, and we can send that to back, and then now you can see the mechanical roof. So now I can use this to copy these around. After we're done, we'll hide the PDF and make our final adjustments. Now I have all my mechanical units aligned and all the openings sized and placed where they're supposed to. Next, I'm going to add a filled region to these small little units that don't have any openings so I can locate them on the plan. To do this, we'll go to the Annotate and pick Filled Region. In the options, I'm going to pick a rectangle, and I'm going to use the medium lines. In the type selector, I'm going to make it a light gray fill, so it's not too obtrusive. So zooming in here, so let me draw a rectangle for my unit, and then click OK on the sketch. Next, I'll copy this in multiple locations on my plan. And finish rotating and aligning these. The last thing I need to add is the roof hatch family. Let's go back to the structure component, the type selector, find in the hatch opening. Selecting placement work plane for the E5. Using the spacebar to rotate it to help match the hatch. After placing it, I want to select it and use the shape handles to stretch it to size. Once I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and hide the PDFs. And I have all my rooftop units. With all my rooftop elements placed, I'm going to frame in an opening for this roof hatch. We're going to zoom in here, and we're going to create a double on either side of the opening and place an LVL header to head off these two inner joists. So first we'll move these joists out a bit. And I'm going to copy my joist to create my double. Now my double joists are centered back in, and we can now add a ledger. Jumping over to the construction documents, in this opening detail, the engineer has shown an additional LVL ledger. So we'll copy the existing one and size it. Back in our model, I'll select my ledger and do a quick copy. From here on the Modify tab, we're going to use the split element, and in the Options toolbar, we're going to select Delete Inner Segment, so it'll cut this out. And you just pick 2 points on either side and delete the leftover. Now we have our additional ledger, and we'll adjust the joist in a few. Now with the double joists, we have a few options, either a plant assembled joist, double joist, a loose double joist with additional filler and web stiffeners, or just a simple double joist with adding backer blocks for our header. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and just use the loose joists and add backer blocks. To do this, we're going to set our view to wireframe so we can see the web of the joist. Next, from our structure, we're going to use a component and we're going to load our components from accessories. And we're going to pick our I-65 backer blocks. And then pick the appropriate size. So it's an 18-inch joist. And in the plan, we can come close to where the header is going to be using the space bar and hovering over the center of the joist, paste our backer block. And we can rotate to the other side, align it close, and pick it there. And go through each one to add your backer blocks to both doubles. And escape a couple times to finish. Now we'll add our LVL header. From our beam command, we'll come to the type selector and look for our LVL beam. We don't have our beam, so we'll go ahead and go back and load our beams. Pick a 3.5 by 18 for this. Once it's loaded, so we just go across and place it. And then we'll align it and adjust the header and the backer blocks that we can see, so it all aligns and fits correctly. Next, I have to modify the hangers. We need top flange hangers, and they need to be a little bit bigger, so we'll take the shape handles and stretch them out. Next, we'll use the type selector to change it to a top flange hanger. Set the width, our depth, and then change all the other properties for nails and model. I also have to make sure the other end of the double joist hangers are corrected. Next, I'm going to adjust my trimmer lengths. Zooming in here, I'm going to grab the shape handle of the joist and drag it back to the face of my header. As you can see, the hanger did not follow this joist. An easy fix to that is selecting this hanger and using the Pick New command to pick a new host. When we zoom in, we can pick our new joist host and make a small little adjustment. And we'll do the same with the second joist. Now that these joists have the hangers reassociated to them, if I move this header and have to adjust these joists, the hanger will follow the joist now. After adding hangers to my header, making some final adjustments, I'm done framing out the opening for the roof hatch. Next, in this video, we're going to be going through the process of creating details for our project. There are a few different ways of creating and adding details. The first and easiest way is inserting standard so-called canned details that have been created. Another way is importing in pre-done details from a prior project. And the last way is to create one from scratch. First, we'll go with our CAN standard details. To start, we want to go to the Insert tab and use the Insert from File and click Insert Views from File. And we'll navigate to our detail items in the 2D drafting views where our container files are saved. We have a few different ones for open web details, open web clips, iJoists, and just overall parts. I'll select the iJoist details. In this dialog box, we have a long list of all the details in the file. To begin, I'll come down and click the check none so it doesn't bring in any unwanted sheets or drafting views. Next, I'll go through and find the details that I'd like to use. And by selecting them, you can see a preview of the different types of details. To bring them in, simply click the checkbox next to the view detail that you'd like to have. Coming down through this list, the code here is IBL. That stands for iJoist Bottom Level. And that's on a CMU wall, as you can see in the preview. So I'll pick a few different simple ones. IHL is iJoist Hanger Level. I'll pick one of those. And then I'll pick another. We'll go with CMU with Wood Ledger Level. Now that I have all the details I want in my project, I'll come and click the OK. In a moment, they'll all be loaded up. Once they're done loading, it'll open up the first detail. Now, use the exact same process from Insert from File and go and select a past project that you know has very similar details or the exact same detail that you want to place into your current project. Now that we have our details imported, we want to look over at the project browser, and under working we'll notice there's a new category called None. This is where Revit will place all the imported standard details. Now eventually we're going to want to move these into our drafting view category. We can simply highlight all our views and come over to the properties and change the view template and pick the drafting view working. Now that we have them in the correct category with some other details that have already been created, we're ready to make any modifications to this CAN detail if we need. If this is exactly what you need, then you're essentially done and you can go to the next. Some items, as an annotation, may have a question mark, and you'll need to double click in and edit those as needed. A few of the different options that you have in these details is by selecting the iJoist. There's a couple different things that you can do. You can flip the joist. You can change the height or the length in any direction. You can also use the properties to change depth and length, the visibility of the blocking. So if you do not want to see the blocking, in this case, you can deselect that and the blocking will disappear. And then other standard stiffener sizes that we have by selecting the one you want and deselecting the one you do not want, and it will update detail part. These stud walls are very simple stud walls. You can use the grips to size them. This one is a standard 5.5. There's many others in the list that you can come through and check and change these as you need. And that is typical for any of these detail components, is you can select these components and using the type selector, go through the list and change them as you need. With these standard details that we import, they come with a green dashed box around it. This is just to help guide in creating our details to make sure that they're not too large and that they'll fit on our sheets. You can modify these as you need if you have a lot of details and want to make them smaller. Just be aware that you'll need to clean up the corners because the viewports will use the overall size. So even though the line goes all the way out, it will make the viewport larger. That's an option you can use. You can also just remove these if you don't need them or don't want them. Next, we'll go and start creating our details from scratch. To start with our details from scratch, we want to add a new view, drafting view. So we'll go to the View tab and select Drafting View. This will come up with a dialog box where you can name your view. The scale is preset to 3/4 inch per foot, which is our company standard. And so I'm going to go ahead and leave this as it is. And it opens up to a blank slate. And as you see, it also will come in to the correct view template. And to start adding our components, we go to the Annotate tab, and you always want to use the Detail Component command. From here, it will come in with the last selected item, which is a face mount hanger. In the properties, we want to use the type selector to select all our parts. Now, our template has the majority of all the basic parts that we need to create our details, in which it is a long list of items. You may also notice that there's some detail components that are used on plans, like the RV bay tag. So be careful of which component that you pick. It may actually be used for a plan. The fastest way to find your items is using the search tool and using keywords for what you'd like to have. Now with joists, there's level and there's sloped. So typing the word level will help you find all the level ones. If I typed slope, it will start listing out the sloped ones. So I have red eyes that are sloped down with a different series, and then I have sloped up. To start, we'll start adding our wall. So I'll type in wall, and you can see all the different types of walls you can use. I'm going to come down to the bottom to select the stud wall. Now this stud wall part has a lot of different options for it. Zoom in here and select it. You can change the length, which is this grip, these two grips here. You can change the width to any width you'd like to use. 2x6 wall. And then the visibility, you have the options of double plate, a single plate, or the continuous. Continuous is grayed out, so to select that, deselect the double and single plate option. And then you'll get a stud wall with a break on the top and the bottom. This is a great function when you have a parapet or walls below and you want to cut your walls. Now, if you're going to cut the walls and you want another wall, you can simply copy this wall down or up and then go and change our plate to double. Now I have created a break in my wall. So if I'm going to have joists lower and higher with some ledgers in this example, so we'll leave that. Next, will you add a bottom bearing joist using the detail components. Look for a level joist. I'm going to pick I'm going with the I-65 series, and then simply find and highlight to snap it. Next, I'm going to put a piece of rim over there. You don't necessarily have to hit the escape key. You can simply go back to the type selector and we'll search for some rim. Now we have rim sections down here. We also have the joist with the rim attached. In this example, we'll pick 1 3/4 wide rim and select to place that. With the rim options, you have a lot of different options to use. First, we'll change our depth to match our joist. There. Here, I'm going to want to adjust my joist to the face of the rim. And with the joist, you'll have web stiffener options. So we'll add a web stiffener to that. With our rim, in this case, it is not beveled, but if you need to have the top beveled or the bottom beveled or double beveled, you can make those changes here. And for example, I'll show you, and it will bevel the top of the joist. If it's a double bevel, by checking this, it automatically sets the bottom to the same angle as the top. Now, for some odd reason, if your bottom bevel is different than your top, you can certainly put in the angle that you need, and it will change. You can also change the visibility. This view is just a generic rim. If it's by others, you can use this. If you need to get extremely detailed, you can use the LVL, which changes the look of, or LSL. Or if it's going to be blocking, you select the blocking and it shows a blocking version of that rim. And that will have continuous rim. Next, I'm going to add some ledger and a section. So I already have some rim, so I'll copy this rim and place it down here. Next, I need a I-joist section, so detail component, and I'll type section, and this will give me all the different sections I have. So scrolling down through the different section types of parts, I'll find the red eye section, I-65, and then align it to my ledger. Next, I'm going to need some plywood. So we'll Click on the search and look for some plywood. I'll go with the 3/4 inch plywood. And in this component, you click your start point and drag it out. Then it inadvertently covers up your joist. You can select, and there's a flip function to flip it up. And now we have our detail. Now we need to annotate and add our notes to this detail. With these parts, there's a couple nice features that have been added to them, that each of these may or do have tag annotation. Sometimes you'll see over here the properties a note text, and it calls out what that stud wall is. Now with these stud walls, there's a nice option here where you change the width of the stud, and the note will also change to be a 2x8 stud wall, and it also changes the actual component. Now to use these, we'll use the Annotate Tag by Category command and simply hover over item and making sure you have the free end so you can have your leader shoulder. You simply click near the line and set it. Now if I come back and need to change this back to a 2x6, I can simply pick and change the width, and when I come back, both the component will change and the note will change. One difference is here, the arrow may move on you, so you'll need to reposition that arrow to point to your component. Many other items here. Plywood has one. This is being called as a blocking panel, so that doesn't work out as well. The rim has our long note. For the joist, it calls out the stiffener, and sometimes you can tab through the items. If this was to have a hanger, I could tab through and pick hanger, and it was hanger by RB. One thing to note with these tags, that they're pre-done. If you come in to change them, sometimes they'll have a note text where you can add text to the beginning or sometimes the end. Also, the description is the actual note, and here in the value. Now, if you make any changes to this, you may get a warning that says changing this type parameter could affect many elements. So if there's multiple rim, then it will change the note for all of them. So that is highly discouraged to do that. If you need to change this note, then just use regular text using the text command and adding your text that you need. Now that I've added all the notes that I need for my detail and it's complete, one item I added here was an anchor by others. I pulled this anchor from the Simpson Strong Tie website, their drawing finder. So if you need any Simpson items, they have a huge list of Revit components. So just go to simpsonstrongtie.com and use their drawing finder to search for different anchors or straps that they have. Next, we'll be adding this to our sheet. So we'll go to and open our sheet. Here in our project browser, under drafting views, find the detail that we'd like to add and just simply drag it on if it has not been put on a different sheet. So let's start adding our details. I'll drop in the one that we were working on and simply just dragging and dropping, and Revit will automatically put in the view title and automatically number them for you as you drag and drop all your details. So I'll quickly go through and drop them, not worrying about the reference lines that go outside the sheet. When they're printed, you will not be able to see those and it will look fine. So as we drag these in, there. Now coming through these, you can select these details and change the length of the view title line if needed. If you need to make room to slide these over, you have that option. When you're pulling these, they will snap to other view title lines, and so will the bubble, so you can align these to all the bubbles and have a nice clean drawing. So now if one of these details you find that you want to switch out, this detail 2 I want to switch out, you can simply delete that one, find the detail that I do want, drag it into position, and place it. Which that one's a little high, so I'll select these and bring it back in. And as you see, it adds it to and renumbers it correctly, which is a nice feature if you need to swap them out. The next item is filling out the title information for our details. Here I've pre-filled out everything. My view name, I've named it the same as my structural reference. And also down here at the bottom, my sheet reference, I've put in the structural details or architectural details that we're referencing. And then on the title on sheet is actually what goes into the detailed title, and you can edit that as you need. Now here you first pull them in. It comes in with the title and the scale of the detail. Now typically we show our sheet reference. So each one of these will need to be changed from the standard viewport that comes in. So up here in the type selector, we see it's set to the viewport title with line, and that's the standard default. If we click on that, we have a lot of different types of view titles. So if you do view name, it's the same. You can have no title and they all disappear. A bubble only, so there's nothing except for the detail number in a line. What we mainly usually use is the viewport title with reference. And by selecting that, that automatically populates the view title with the name and the view reference. So if I came in here and it wasn't actually 4 and 10, it was just 10, I can delete that and it automatically updates. And that is about the basic steps to creating details, annotating them, and adding them to the sheets. Next, I'll show you a couple specialized details. Here you see I have a specialized 3D detail I'm going to show you how you can create. And this is from a live 3D view of our project. So we'll go through the process of creating and adding this to our sheet. First, I will delete that, and we'll want to go to our plan. Which is our 3D plan is where we want to start. Now here, if I zoom in, I have my hatch, roof hatch that I want to detail. I already have the roof hatch, but we'll go through the process. So I want to duplicate this 3D view with detail, rename it, call it hatch 2. Oops. Cannot have symbols, so we'll just say it's hatch. Now that's called hatch, or you can name it the detail number that you'd like to use. Next, as you see, our selection box needs to be selected. Typically in a 3D view, you don't have your section box, so make sure it's turned on and you can see this three-dimensional cube. And we'll use the grips to cut down our 3D view to the area that we want to show in detail. This takes a little bit of finessing. To get just right. Change the view, try to get close to isometric. And then some items you can come in and go ahead and hide these elements that we don't want to see. One more, there we go. Now that we've had it created, we'll close those windows, come back here, and simply just take that 3D view that you created and drag it into your view. Now this one's a little bit teeny, and that's because we didn't change the scale. So we want to come in here to the scale and change the scale to match what our detail are. And this is pretty much kind of a trial and error on getting your detail oriented. Now I can simply take this and delete it. Let's drag it back on. There we go. That's a bit closer. Now we may want to play with the scale and change it. When this is printed, the section box will not print. So you won't have to worry about the way it looks. It should come in. It should print correctly. And then just selecting the viewport and adjusting your view name, title on sheet, and sheet reference if necessary. And that's how you put in a live 3D view. The last detail type I'd like to go over is a live detail cut of your model. So if we go to one of our views here, and I want to add simple bearing detail here and show what the live model looked like. Very simply using the section tool, and under the type selector, make sure you have RB Live Detail selected. And in this case, we are not going to be referencing any other views. And so you simply set your detail, and you'll see kind of like the section view, the box that shows the view and we'll go through and make sure these adjustments show exactly what we want. Once you've done that, you double click on the bubble, and then this is how it looks to start. So there's a bit of updating here, and we'll start with our scale, set it to our detail scale. I'll set it to fine, and for this I'll make consistent color so I can see the colors. So now in one fell swoop we have the majority of our detail created. Now these levels, you can choose to show the levels, or if you do not want to show them, you can simply right click and hide them. Next, here we'll probably want to show a couple break lines. So using the design detail component, using the search function, look for a break and select our break. Using the spacebar to rotate, we'll go ahead and place our first break. And you see there's a wipeout on one side. When you're adding it, it's difficult to see which side it's going to be, but you can simply select it, and rotate it around. And then you can make all the adjustments that you need for your break symbol. And then you can also copy it, rotate it around for the top and bottom. This one I'll go ahead and I'll mirror it a little too far. Now if we want to come, we can make it hidden line. And the only thing I need to do now is annotate it. Coming back to our details, and we'll come in here. Live details will typically come under RB detail view working, and it's named detail 0. And so you'll want to rename that. You simply drag and drop it into your plan. It certainly looks a lot different, and there's a little bit more adjustments that we need to do. So I'll double click in here, and we need the cut view on this. So drawing detail lines will help finish this up, making sure that you're using the correct line style. Now if we need some plate here, we can certainly go with line here. And then we have our blocking. And now with these live details, any changes to the model will be reflected here. And here, make sure you're not moving these items in the live detail, because these are truly the items in your model. So just be careful when you're making adjustments. It's mostly just leaving the view there and adding detail lines to show more detail. And that concludes this video on adding and creating details. Now that I'm done adding my product and laying out this roof here, I need to start adding my annotation, which includes dimensions, tags, and notes, similar to what you see down at the bottom of the screen here. We're going to be adding all our annotation to these two small bays. First item I want to do is I want to tag my joist bay. And we have a nice little tool to use under the RedBuilt tab, which is called Backcheck. And by selecting this, we can first come over and select all the joists in a particular bay that we want to tag. Once selected, we can come over here to click Finish, and a dialog pops up showing the series, depth, length, tag, and count. And in this, I can come in and change the tag name if I need to. And then once I'm done, click OK, and it adds our tag. Another way of doing this is you can first select all the joists, go to the Backcheck tool, and it immediately opens up the tag property box where I can come in and adjust the tag name. The quantities, cut length, the depths, you cannot change, just the tag name itself. And we'll click OK. You can select these by making small adjustments. If by chance you have one single joist or a few that you need to change, you can use the drag component and drag it back to whatever joist you need. You can also copy these. They're not tied to the joists once added to another bay. And in the properties, you see the RB type and quantity, so we can come in and manually change what it's going to be. And it changes the tag. So this is just a generic annotation tag that our tool automatically will read the information from the joist, but then after that, it's, as I call it, a dumb tag, where you have to modify type and quantity after it's been placed. Next time we're going to go through is dimensioning. You go to the Annotate tab and you have all your different dimensioning options. Typically we use the aligned dimension. This will make it so you can dimension either linear or at different angles, as you see. We'll select that and come to our type selector, and there's a few different standard styles that we have. The clear span is used to show open web clear spans. The feet tick comes in at feet and uses ticks instead of liters, and then the text size. We also have RB inches, which shows inches, and then a custom one that I made, and I'll show you later. First, we'll start with the basic feet and start selecting our joist using tab select to find the edge that you want, and we'll go from base of stud here. And you can either have just one, or you can do a chain and quickly do a whole chain of dimensions using tab as needed to select the face you want. Now this continuous one is one piece. If I was to delete this, the entire string would be deleted. If I didn't want to have this 12-foot 2 and wanted to actually go all the way, I could simply take this dimension and with the center grip, pull it back and highlight the face I want it to, and it will combine that dimension. Undo that. A couple more dimensions. Now here, this 2-foot one, you can select the dimensions and you have the drag text that you can pull it out. And this one, I want to show the inches, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to drag this off, make a single one. I'll start another dimension. Here from the face to my grid line. It will snap to another dimension if one's available. Drag my text out. Now I want to change this to inches, so I'll go to my type selector and pick my inches. Another setting we have for these is if you drag this and select the center of an item, like the center of a wall, and reposition this, it automatically will put in a center line and show the extension line as a center line type. Now this will automatically do it whenever you select any kind of center, be it the center line of a joist or a wall. If you do not want to show the center line, then you'll need to create a new dimension style from the default. And you do this by coming over, selecting the dimension, and clicking Edit Type. I'll duplicate this. I'll rename and say it's no center line. And scrolling through here, we have the center line symbol. Now if we select this, there's many different symbols you can use. And I simply pick the none and click OK. And then you still have the center line, the line type center line, but the actual center line symbol will disappear. Clean this up. Next, I'll add my detail bubbles. Now, previously we went and created all our details, and they're all made because we're going to be adding reference detail views. So from the view, we want to pick our section command and have the detail view, which says RB live detail, but we're not going to make live detail symbols. Once you've done that, you need to immediately come up to the ribbon and select reference other view to be able to pick one of the standard can details that we had or a custom one that we created. In the drop down, you can come through and find all the different details that are available and find the one that you want to reference. Once you've done that, you click where the head starts and then where the leader line will end. And at this point, while it's still highlighted, to add another detail, we hit the return and it restarts the detail command. And we come up here and again select reference other view and pick the other detail view that we want. Then we have it. Now we also have a different detail bubble for referencing construction document details that we didn't actually create a detail for. To use that, we'll want to go to our Annotate tab and select the symbol command. In our type selector, we want to come through and find the RB condoc tag. This is just a simple symbol that we can use. And once you place it, it's pretty much blank. Now, once placing it, if it doesn't have a leader and you want one, come up to the ribbon options and click Add Leader, and it will add this leader here. You can simply drag this, adjust it to the way you need it. Now to edit this, you can simply click in the fields and add the text that you need. Now this detail bubble you can easily copy and place in another area and adjust your leaders, match. You can also copy over here. And I want to cut across this parallel wall. And I can change my number. And now we have our details called out. Next, I have some ledgers that I've typed, and I'm going to want to tag these ledgers. To do that, we're in the Annotate, and we tag by category. And this will be an auto tag that will read the RB type that we set. So I'll come over and hover, and you can see that by default the tag is vertical and kind of locked. So we'll want to go to our options and make sure it's set. You can have horizontal or vertical, a leader, or not have a leader. We want a leader. And then you have attached end, which would be a straight leader from the symbols to the object, or free end, which you can add a shoulder to. So we'll set that. And once you hover over, and it will change to match symbology for different items. So hangers will have the hanger symbol, beams as joists, ledgers, or glue lambs will have the rectangle. So once we hover over and have it, we'll pick and select and place it. And you can make small adjustments as you need. If I hit the return, and we'll go through and keep adding our tags. And if you see, you can align it with the last tag leaders to snap them so it's consistent. And we'll add one more. And escape a couple times to finish the command. Now for these ledgers, I want to add a little text to help identify that these types are actual ledgers. So I'll use the text command without any leaders. Click in an area near it, and place my text, and simply copy it down to each ledger. Now again, same thing with hangers, is a tag by category. And with this example, I'm going to do one without a leader, and I'm going to put it near the hanger. So at first, it'll go right over the hanger, and that's okay. We'll go ahead and select that. And that's not the one I want, but we can fix that. Once I've placed it, you have the option in the ribbon that you can pick a new host. So if I pick the new host, I can come over and hover over a new hanger. And it'll change if I can find the right one I want to change to. There we go. So that's the standard hanger for this detail. Now the other hanger we had was a special one to show using hangers with leaders. So we go back to tag category, And we're going to set the leader option. Come in and find the hanger. And go ahead and place our tag. Now I have two hangers here that I wanted to tag. It's those two. So I'm going to move this out of my way a little bit. Now with these tag by category objects, you're not able to have multiple leaders. You only get to have one leader. But if I have two hangers that I want to call out, there's a little trick to this. This is by adding some text with a leader. And so what I can do is place a leader there. Instead of any text, I'll just click outside of it, the box, and cancel. And then I can do a little fine adjustment using the cursor keys to get it close to a line. And now we have pointing at two different hangers with one tag. Our next item is our slope indicator. So our roof is sloping. Up in our dimension commands, we have the spot slope. And this tag will read the actual slope of the member. Now, if your member isn't sloped, it will come up and say no slope. And in that case, you'll have to just use regular text with a leader. So here, I'll go ahead and place that. And when you move it, you can put it on either side of the joist. Go ahead and cancel. A few options: you can use the grips to move the symbol, or you can flip the symbol as you need to make it visible and not covering up anything. My next item is I want to add my on-center spacing tag for this bay. This again is a annotation symbol, so we'll use the symbol tool and come in here to find the RBOC tag. You come in and you'll see that you have the leader with the tick. Use the space bar to rotate it as needed. Go ahead and find your start point and cancel out. At first it's blank, but when you highlight it, you see the little question mark, and over in the properties you have the text, so the on center, and that's the on center spacing in inches. And then notes, you could put any kind of note in here as continuous. A typical one is UNO, and then it will populate. By default, it populates with start layout at 24 inches on center, unless noted otherwise. If this is continuous or you need to shorten it up, you can remove the start layout text. So then the word start is removed. Also, if you want or need to, you can turn the tick on and off, so it's not there. This is helpful when you have a dimension. So if I was to dimension from here to the center and then wanted to move this to the endpoint, and it'll snap. Now if I turn the tick on, it shows a little bit larger, or it may be going in the opposite direction depending on the rotation of the tag. So when that happens and you have a dimension, you can simply turn off and it'll go away. And we also have the center line. Again, if we didn't want that center line to show, we can come to our custom made one that we removed it and clean it up. couple other little annotation pieces that you may need is a snowdrift symbol. Our snowdrift symbol comes in through the structural component tool. And here in the type selector, we have it already selected in the snowdrift. If not, you can certainly find it in the list. And in placing this is placed based off a face, or in this case, I'd like to place it on just the work plane. So I'll select a work plane, and now you can see it, and it just selects it on the same work plane as my joist. So I'll come in here, place it where I need it, and then by selecting the item in the properties, you can come in and change the load as needed, and then change the distance. Now also, as you see, the 6 foot and the text is over the symbol itself. And you can come in and make a slight adjustment for the offset until it's used, or use the grips, and you can change the information on it. Another item is our mechanical units. This is also under structural components. Finding our mechanical unit, go ahead and search for it. Again, this is a face base, so if you hover over a joist, it'll show up, or you can simply click place on work plane and align it as you need. And with this unit, you can take and use the grips to stretch out the unit to the size you need, or you can go to the properties and fill out all the information so you can get exact size for the unit, and it'll change appropriately. And then you can adjust the location of your text and also the location of the ductwork, the openings as needed, and then changing the size of the supplies. You can use the properties to change that. And once it's changed, it's locked. These grips will only relocate the position of that opening. The size of the opening needs to be changed in the properties under construction. And there you have it. We have fully annotated our plan, and we'll go to the next area. Here in this area, I have some special web stiffeners at this detail that I'd like to tag and call out. So again, we're going to be going to the annotate symbol command and coming in here and selecting our RB web stiffener tag. Now this tag is not an auto tag as you've seen with beams and joists. This is because web stiffeners are do not show up in our plans, and if they're not showing up, then the tag will not show up. So this is a special case where we need to have a separate tag symbol. Now with this, you still have the option of leaders here in the ribbon. So I'll add a leader and point in the area that it is. In here, either in the properties, or you can type in the tag name of that web stiffener, and then we have a special web stiffener symbology. Our next item is adding clouds for our questions for customers. To start this, I already have a few different clouds that are hidden. To set up your revisions, we want to go to the View tab and select Revisions. This is where you can control all the different types of revisions that you're going to have. In here, we already have one for approval, but if we needed another, we can simply just add one. Now to start, I like to clear out all the data fields here. And then the show, we have a couple different options. You can not show it at all. So you could use that as your own reference. So you can cloud items, just the tag, or in our case, we are going to use the cloud and tag. We're going to show the cloud, but we're not necessarily going to tag it with a revision symbol at this point. So now I have my sequence 2. We're going to want to remember our sequence 2 for this process. I'll simply click OK. And we'll go back to the Annotate and use the revision cloud. Now to start, you have your line symbology, so you can do lines. Rectangle is where it's set at, but there's many different shapes. And then, as you can see, we're in a sketch mode, so we'll have to click the finish once we're done. And with default, we added a new sequence. So here in the properties, we have our revision sequence 2. Here you have a drop down and you can select from multiple ones that you have. But we're going to start with the sequence 2. And come in here, and you can come in and start adding your clouds. Now if you add more than one cloud, they will be joined together. So for example, if I have 2 clouds, come up to finish, and you see you have 2 clouds, but when I select it, it selects both clouds. So if you want to move this cloud, it's going to move both clouds. So depending on what you're doing, be careful of clouding. Typically I only have 1 cloud at a time, so I can click the Edit Sketch and simply delete the cloud I don't want and save it. And next, I would add some leader text here to put in my note, asking my question about the cloud. Now when this comes back and the cloud has been answered, the next step with these clouds would be to set this as your next revision. To do this, we go back to the View Revisions, and then in the sequence, we would start this and fill this information out as we need. I'm just going to copy some text over to fill it out. In this area, I'm going to want to set it to tag. Once I click OK, you see the cloud disappears, but it's still here. Now to add this revision cloud, simply coming to our Annotate and Tag by category. So it knows that it's a revision cloud, so it's going to use the revision tag. And again, if we don't want a leader, in this case I don't, you just simply select and place this. Now you can see these tags don't have numbers and they only have question marks. This is because this particular view has not been dragged onto a sheet yet. Once it's been dragged onto a sheet, then these revision triangles will populate with the corresponding number. And we'll get to that once we get to adding our views to sheets. Next, I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of customization of our dimension styles. As you can see here, adding additional text below and changing the dimension from foot and inches to actual text. So we're going to come over here to this area and we're going to add the on-center spacing using a dimension style. So we'll run the dimension, come in here and just quickly throw in our dimension. Now to change this text, we want to double click on the dimension text itself. And then we'll get this dialog box. Here, this is a place where you can replace the actual value with text. So in here, you can add in text. Just be careful of how much text you put in here. Too much, and it'll run over the line, and then you'll have to drag it out. And let's make sure this matches. So there's first, down here in the text fields, you can have text above or below the original value. So here I'll put in a little bit more text and say OK. And then we have using a dimension text to call out our on-center spacing. This is especially helpful as shown when you have two different spacings happening and in a small area. Now that we're finished annotating everything in our model view, we're going to be dragging this view onto our sheet and adding our schedules and any other notes that we need. So from here, we're going to our roof placement plan. As you see, I've already drug on the view. That's by simply grabbing our view and dragging and dropping it onto our sheet. The next little item we always need to put in is our north arrow, which I'll delete this one and show you how to add it again. So it's the annotate symbol. And from here, you can scroll down to the north arrow and use spacebar to set the distance. You can also use the rotate command to rotate at any odd angles. And using the arrow keys to adjust things. The next item is adding schedules. There are multiple pre-done schedules. The ones we put on our sheets is under Schedule Customer. A few items in here that we notice, I have some glue lambs. So just picking and dragging our glue lambs in there and verifying that everything looks correct. There's no blanks and the descriptions are completely filled out. If they're not, you'll have to come in and do some editing to the schedule, which will be shown later. So a few more other things, some high joists to add in and align it, and some hangers. And that's the simple version of adding your schedules to your sheets. Next item you see down here is some keyed notes. These keyed notes are also a schedule item that you can find under the schedules and schedule sheets. Scheduled sheets are schedules that just go on sheets. And you have sheet view and view list, which is more used for documentation and editing multiple sheets at once or views. And that will be covered on a later video. Let's go back to our model view so we can start adding our keynotes. We're back in our model view, and you can see we already have a few keynotes or plan notes. We're going to add another one here. So adding in the symbol is from the Annotate symbol command. And the type selector will come down to RB plan note. And it comes in and you can select the number of leaders. So this one, you can have multiple leaders. And it comes in with, starts with the 1. You click to place it. We'll cancel out. Adjust our leaders. You can certainly mix it up. Now with these notes, because they use a schedule, we have some properties to fill out over here in the text. So first, the note number, you can change that to 5. And here we're going to have change the note. Simple note there. The view type needs to match the name of your view here. So I have high joist roof. So it's already been added in there. If this is a different view, you're going to want to add that here. So this controls what notes show up on what sheet. So if I had a 3-story building, I'd have first floor, second floor, third floor. You'd want to set what this note is for. So if it's second floor, you type in second floor. So in that way, when you pull the schedules in, it reads which view you're adding it to, and appropriately changes the list, because the list will change for each sheet that you have, which is a nice little trick, but you have to make sure to use the view type and set it correctly. A couple other options with this is the visibility. You have the bubble visibility. If you were to turn that visibility off, it turns the text on and actually changes it to just be leader text. So you can go back and forth if it's text or maybe it's too long and you want to actually use a symbol, then you can come back and select the bubble visibility. Now that we've done that, we want to come in to our schedules and open up the keyed notes schedule. As you can see, you see 1 through 3, and the new one that we've added is 5. And here you can come in here and quickly change the text if you need, or if it's not showing up, you can use edit the filters, and then this is where the filters out by view type. And then here for this selection, you'll have a selection of all the different views, or you can type in what you need. Once you've done that, you can drag this schedule onto your sheet and adjust to fit your sheet as needed. On here, I just added a blank symbol and put the pound in the number just to highlight what the symbol is for. Thank you for watching this video, and please come back to the RedBuilt CAD SharePoint for more information on OneNote, other Revit guides, and other YouTube videos, and also link to 16 bugs for any issues you may have. Again, thank you.